Friends in the chronic pain and disability community come to me from time to time and they ask me, Peter, how come nothing changes? How come we can't get our medicine back? And I understand. I am an intractable pain patient that's untreated pain. It is heck. It is very, very hard. And it feels like that no matter how many reporters we talk to, no matter how much work and advocacy we put out there, legislators we try to collaborate with, facts we share on the social media, nothing seems to get better. In fact, every time we seem to make some progress, the other side doubles down. The media carries water for them. The politicians are more than happy to campaign on it. And things just get worse. Why does that happen? And this is what this video I want to try to focus on. It's basically, into the short of it before we get going, it's basically about money, incentive structures, and broken institutions. And that these things have created a perfect storm that make it so getting our pain medicine may take a while. I hope it's not true, but my mentor and friend Jacob Solom over at Reason said that could be a generation until we get our pain meds back. And I pray that's not true, but this argument I'm going to make here in this video goes to show that's a high possibility. So before we go through this video, and I hope I don't make any of you too depressed, please please click the thumbs up and share this video. All of you that have supported me so far in efforts like this, you guys are awesome. 21 states just rejected $18 billion from an opioid settlement from drug wholesalers. This is only 3 companies: McKesson Corp, AmerisourceBergen, and Cardinal Health. And the 20 state attorney generals plus Puerto Rico and District of Columbia rejected $18 billion over 18 years. Now, what is the short of this? Well, the opioid crisis, if you remember, basically the media took it as 70,000+ deaths a year, and it's all because of prescription opioids. And when you dive down into it, that's not it at all, but that's what they went with. And of course, politicians are happy to campaign on this. We're like, this is great. We can campaign how we're going to solve this issue. And attorney generals love this because this seems like easy law enforcement fix. We can take the doctors and the pharmaceuticals to task. That's a lot easier than dealing with actual criminals. And the trial lawyers are like, Look, give me, baby. I'm so excited. I'm going to buy my 3rd lake house. And so this perfect situation for some members of our elite came about. And so last year we had a huge lawsuit against Purdue and the Sackler family. And of course, Purdue got, shot for bajillions, not bajillions. It was in the lots. It was a lot. It was a lot. And Incest Pharmaceuticals, a company that made an opioid pain medication, they just went bankrupt because of this stuff. And so the pharmaceutical companies are shaking like leaves. It's very hard to make a buck in pharmaceuticals in the United States. I know that sounds strange, but the margin of profit that you actually get for the effort and research put in is very low. You can sometimes put 30 to 40 years of research work, time, and effort to get a drug from concept to your bottle. And it's hard. Not just the science, it's just all the bureaucratic red tape and testing that you have to cut through. So this points to another issue. So the second story I want to go to. Now, we often talk about how at the national level, between the Trump and the Obama administration, the DEA, how they push forward really intense guidelines and rules against opioid prescribing, like the CDC's 2016 guidelines. But often, the most damage that makes it impossible for doctors to give pain treatment to their patients is actually at the state level. And I want to show you 2 examples. The first one is just from this last week in Pennsylvania. The second is from Missouri. So the first one is this new law that was just passed. It was sent to the governor's desk and signed into law. It's SB 432, and I'm going to use this article from Local 21 News. The legislation seems innocuous on the face of it. It just requires Medicaid managed care organizations to notify the Attorney General and the Department of Human Services if they believe a controlled substance was prescribed or dispensed fraudulently. The article actually asks 2 physicians about what they think of this. Put from the article, most would agree it's sensible and responsible, but more and more doctors say bills like this are the same reason they no longer prescribe opioids. The first is Dr. Carrie DeLone, medical director for the Geisinger Holy Spirit Medical Group. The biggest hurdle for physicians today is fear. This is going to the level that they're now afraid that they're going to be thrown in jail. Second doctor, Dr. Jordan Klein, said there are real examples of doctors getting in trouble for prescribing narcotics. And I'm going to tell you what's going to happen with this legislation. This legislation is just going to make it so doctors won't prescribe opioids at all in Pennsylvania, because if they are prescribing to a disabled patient or an elderly patient or someone that is in need of Medicaid services, they know that if that person gets sick because of the medication, or someone suspects it does and they report them, their careers are over. And so they're just not going to deal with the hassle of it, and they're going to abandon their patients in mass, or at least they're just not going to give them the pain treatment. Now, a state that did try to solve the opioid crisis by not prescribing opioids has now blown up in their face in a really kind of schadenfreude, kind of enjoyable way. This is from the people at Pain News Network, my favorite of the pain news websites. Missouri finds managing pain without opioids isn't easy, by Lauren Weber over from Kaiser Health News. So what this story is about is that Missouri decided that we were going to try to use Missouri dollars towards services that weren't opioids to treat chronic pain. So they would offer chiropractic care, acupuncture, physical therapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy for those medication patients in April. But guess what? Only 500 people of this program are actually using it. There are 330,000 adult Medicaid users in Missouri alone, and only 500 of them. That's so bad. That's less than 1/3 of 1%. Access the program through December at a cost of, those 500 people, it costs $190,000. Oh my gosh. According to Josh Moore, the Missouri Medicaid Pharmacy Director, while the numbers may reflect an undercount because of lags in submitting claims, the jointly funded federal-state program known in the state as MO HealthNet is hitting just a fraction of possible patients so far. Now, they talk about that in this article, that they think this is because of problems with the program itself, that it's just not very effective getting this information out. But the article makes some real argumentation here that perhaps that's not the issue at all, but that these services they're offering aren't easy to get to, and they aren't very effective for pain. Now, I want to go here. President Trump recently was pushing a budget that would make a bunch of cuts. It would be pushing for something called austerity. And austerity simply means is trying to make financial models, solvent. Make financial models work so that they don't go broke. And there was a lot of outrage. Now, listen, you don't need to worry about anything because we don't do budgets in the United States anymore. We haven't had a budget in 10 plus years. So I wouldn't get stressed out too much about if somehow we had a miracle and a budget happens again. But it did point to an interesting thing. It's because his budget made some pretty major cuts to Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. $478 billion Medicare, cuts benefits by $63 billion over 10 years, and $1 trillion for Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Now, people are worried a lot about this, but the reason why the Trump administration is doing this is because the model we use in the United States to pay for disability is fundamentally broken. And if you have had any experience trying to receive disability benefits through Social Security or elsewhere, you know it is fundamentally broken. I know this from a personal standpoint. I spent 3 years with a lawyer trying to get disability support, and it was all for naught. It was a giant friggin' waste of my energy and time. And what I learned, and many of you do when you try to get Social Security benefits for disability, is that you often have to go through 2 or 3 judges. That it's I wouldn't say corrupt, but it's a very broken system where your doctors are pretty much ignored, and your experience and testimony is pretty much ignored for someone you will never meet who doesn't know your situation at all, and it's on that person's recommendations the judge listens to. The system is fundamentally and financially broken. Now, listen. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are on the path to going insolvent. And I know that's like, you're crazy to say it. No, that's the truth. I mean, a little bit of expertise here. Medicare to go broke 3 years earlier than expected, trustees say. This is from 2018. And what they say is Medicare could go broke by 2026, so only 6 years from now. And Social Security could go insolvent by 2035. So these systems are fundamentally broken. They were not designed to be all-encompassing support systems for everyone that ever got sick. Okay, when Social Security was put out, the idea was people would only be on Social Security 3 or 4 years, and then they kicked the bucket, because people didn't have a life expectancy that was in the 70s or 80s. Okay, it was back down the 50s, and so sadly, Social Security became, though, the system we use for retirement and for disability. Then we add Medicaid and Medicare, and those systems largely see a similar problem. And so austerity is necessary to happen. The Republicans under Paul Ryan tried to push this, but it was very unpopular. It's, I think, one of the reasons Paul Ryan lost his speakership. And just recently, even Pete Buttigieg has been pushed for austerity changes, and of course he's been said, "Oh, you're such a hater, Pete Buttigieg. Oh, you hate." And there is no desire in the culture right now for austerity. Now, this isn't just a U.S. problem. The U.K. is seeing a very similar issue too. No one wants to make cuts. There's a reason why Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare is called the third rail in politics, because it will kill any and all careers that try to deal with the problem. So I'm telling you, disability is fundamentally broken financially. I have friends and family that work in medicine, and the payments that you get from Medicaid and Medicare are so small compared to normal patients. And so a lot of these hospitals struggle to make any profit from treating patients, perhaps like myself, people who are really sick and don't have ways to pay for it. And so money-wise, it's very difficult. They look at patients in healthcare policy like us, and there's so many of us, as a net negative problem. Okay, there's this really fancy part in this, an interesting part in this article from the AP. Trump builds on Obama opioid policy. And it shows a way of looking at health policy that I see all the time. We heard it from the Democrats in New Hampshire just last week. This is from the article. A study looking at New England by the nonprofit Institute for Clinical and Economic Review found that every dollar invested in medication treatment would return about $1.80 in savings when factoring in society's costs from lost productivity and crime. When it comes to the bureaucrats in the executive agencies, the people that actually work at these places, they look at people like myself as numbers, and they look at us as being big, expensive money sinks. And so they have to try to find a way to deal with this money. Now, no one wants austerity. However, people do want to deal with the addicts in the opioid crisis. Ta-da! I've talked about it a bajillion times. I am very tired of talking about it. Opioid-related deaths were never about prescription drugs. They never were. Prescription drugs also did not start getting people addicted either. They were not a major factor. What was the problem was recreational drug abuse. People abusing drugs. And the problem was the drugs got more deadly because we added black market fentanyl to the mix, and that can kill people one try. And it is a real problem. And what's interesting is, while opioid deaths are down right now, meth deaths are way up in Ohio, in Florida, places that you said, well, this is where the opioid crisis is ravaging the communities. Well, it's interesting because now meth deaths are ravaging the communities. Methinks perhaps it wasn't an opioid problem and maybe the human problem. Because maybe people just want to get high on drugs, and it doesn't really matter if it's opioids or it's meth. Perhaps. I'm just saying. Some obvious truths that no one wants to mention anymore. And of course, there's nothing in our culture right now that can handle saying, hey, you guys, you have some personal responsibility. Like I get it. I have people I know that are addicts. I've been to AA group, well, not AA specifically, but AA-like groups, 12-step groups. I have a lot of compassion for people who are in that situation. But those groups exist only when people take responsibility for their lives, and society does not want to do that. Like, there's so much evidence about this issue, it's almost mind-boggling. Okay, like my friend Jacob Salm, this article, it shows opioid prescriptions surged in Germany, but the opioid addiction never became a thing. Germany didn't have the opioid addiction, even though they had a very high rate of opioid prescriptions. And studies that look at actual OD deaths, like this one from Massachusetts, confirmed that people were rarely dying after using opioids that were prescribed for them. Those are facts. Inconvenient, not like to be talked about, but they're facts. Hard facts. You know, why? Here's my last part. So we talked about the money. We talked about there being no fuel in the culture to deal with chronic pain patients. There's nothing in the culture that says people should take responsibility. You know, whenever we get sick, whenever a doctor screws up and messes up our life, we sue them, you know, into oblivion if we possibly can. Every doctor in hospital now pays humongous amounts for a liability insurance, which is just about being sued. Okay, we as a culture do not like taking responsibility. We look for paydays. We look for the lottery. We want to use the power of government to solve all our problems. And to make it worse, the people that should be helping us with these things, like disability organizations, are just breaking apart. They are not doing their job. A guy I really respect, Yuval Levin, he has this book that just came out called Time to Build, and it's about how institutions that we should be able to rely on have fallen apart. In journalism, in healthcare, in this case that's what this problem is, they have fallen apart. And so we don't have institutions that can really come out and stand up for us, those that have lost our care. You know, this is a truth. If you are a chronic pain patient, or you probably have experienced this, you used to have a doctor you could really trust. They were awesome. They took really good care of you. They listened to your concerns. They're probably the one that got you the opioid prescription to help you manage it safely and healthfully. But they retire, they leave, and you no longer have their protection. Now, maybe you have to go to a free clinic, maybe you have to go to a doctor you never met before. This doctor, they don't trust you, they don't believe you, and they are not going to stand up for you. And as a close relative of mine who's going through medical school at the moment has said, that doctors fundamentally know right now that if you are an inconvenient patient, if you are unconventionally sick, and you do not have an advocate in the healthcare system, there's nothing you can do. Because if you do not have someone that's going to write nice things in your EHCAR, if you do not have someone that's willing to go to bat for you and say, hey, I know he seems odd, but this is a really good guy. This is a good guy. He can help. He's responsible. He's not an addict. You should take good care of him. Well, then it's over. There's nothing you can do. And it's very, very frustrating. And this is why we are not getting our pain medicine back, at least anytime in the near future. Because the incentives are for us to be blamed for the opioid deaths. The incentives are there the trial lawyers will get rich on this, the politicians will campaign on this, the journalists will write stories about this. The Washington Post devoted their health section of their news last year completely to the issue of the opioid crisis, and only one article got close to standing up for pain patients, and we had to rally for that. That's one of my few social media campaigns actually led to something good. So yeah, there's nothing there right now that makes them want to help us. You know, what should you take away from this kind of long-ish video about the chronic pain situation, why we're not getting our meds back, is that truth-telling, you need to still do it. But we also need to try to make reform happen in our institutions. How come the disability organizations haven't spoken up for us? How come the ACLU hasn't done a lawsuit on our behalf? How come, the medical organizations for these physicians don't do more to stand up for us? And I mean, they have done some, and I'm grateful for what they have done, but it's not near enough. And so we need to encourage institutional reform. We need to encourage responsibility, and we do need to stand up for ourselves because no one else will. If you have chronic pain and it's really bad right now and you feel like everything's falling apart, man, I am with you. I have those feelings often. Please don't give up. Things will get better, but they will only get better because we made them better. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. You are all in my prayers. Take care.